Well, gang, MovieBob had himself a busy weekend of doing intellectually stimulating panel discussions at a respected Boston area sci-fi convention, and maybe some other stuff. Look, point is, now is not the time for a big, brain-hurty essay thingy, so let's dive back into the junk drawer for another handful of topics that haven't quite matured into full-blown episodes yet. And just so I'm not being completely lazy, we'll keep it narrowed to one subject: video games. Hey, remember when we talked a few times about gender and sexism in gaming, and how sometimes it can be hard to figure out where the line is between sex-y and sexist? Let me show you a good example. See, speaking only for myself, I've never really found the goofy cheesecake costume choices in the Soul Calibur games to be all that offensive. The series' basic aesthetic is over-design everything, so it only makes sense that they'd carry the fantasy art impractical armor thing to its logical extreme. Yeah, it's kitschy, but it's not necessarily degrading, I guess is the word. This advertisement for Soul Calibur 5, on the other hand, this is what degrading looks like. I'm informed that the Japanese text here reads "go big" or "go home," incidentally. What's the difference? Well, unlike the games, which are primarily built around combat controls with sex appeal as a purely aesthetic visual detail, this ad is based 100% around sexual objectification. Please take note that the character's eyes have been cropped out, along with almost any other distinguishing feature, to reinforce the breasts as be-all end-all point. And let's not even get started on the tacky double symbolism of the snake here. It's not just degrading to whoever this character is, but to the audience it's supposedly aimed at. That's the difference. You know what should get another chance? Adventure Island. No, I'm not counting that remake nobody cared about. This is something the industry needs. More games where the protagonist is a fat guy in a grass skirt who fights a rhinoceros. Plus, it's an excuse to get more Caribbean island-infused music into the world of game soundtracks. You know, speaking of video game soundtracks, while I don't necessarily mind every game score trying to sound like a Hollywood movie these days, is it too much to ask that they at least try emulating a composer other than James Horner? Are they actually going to do another Lords of Shadow? 'Cause I kinda don't want them to. I actually really liked it while playing through it, but it got to be a real slog towards the end, and the tenuous Castlevania connection never really gelled for me, and I've got zero interest in seeing where their new weird version of the mythology goes next. More so than many others, this is a series that probably needs to stick to formula. So, they made a South Park game that's basically New Super Mario Bros. But with South Park characters? Hey, looks good, don't get me wrong, but why didn't this exist like 10 or 15 years ago? Probably would have been way easier to make than, say, this. Somebody really dropped the ball on that one. Okay, this is going to make me sound like a jerk to a lot of people no matter what, so I'm just going to spit it out. We all miss Steve Jobs, visionary, smart guy, good ideas, etc. Just maybe not all of them were good all the time. Case in point, buttons. Sometimes you need them. I'm sorry, you do. So, given that Mr. Jobs has regrettably passed away and thus isn't going to just immediately veto it anymore, could someone maybe make an official iPhone with some gaming buttons, or maybe an official button cradle for the iPhone? Is it too early to start talking about that? 'Cause that's all that's really standing between gaming apps and depth right now, and we really need some serious back-and-forth competition in handhelds. It's not really good that Nintendo, or really anybody, just gets to run an entire big chunk of the medium. We need someone to give them some actual competition. No, come on, be serious. You know, so far I really like Skyward Sword, but I detect a 98% probability that we will never hear from this character again. Speaking of Skyward Sword, when we look back on this particular moment in the Zelda franchise, the historical consensus will say, well, it'll say, probably shouldn't have released this at the exact same time as Skyrim, for one thing. But I think it'll also say that the game was most notable for the way that, all at once and kind of out of left field, sexuality finally found its way into the Zelda universe. Not overt sexuality like this, it's just that this is the first time it feels like a significant number of story points and personality traits are based around the various characters having an interest in one another that goes beyond the chaste chivalry of previous installments. I mean, this is easily the most open any incarnations of Link and Zelda have been about romantic leanings. There's that love triangle thing with the bully guy, the love letter side quest, the hilariously suggestive dialogue from the item check girl. Hell, even the little robot guy only helps you out because he's trying to hook up with the redundancy fairy here. And of course there's Gidahim, who is definitely the first Nintendo character whose entire being from design to behavior seems based around his own aggressive and yet somewhat difficult to define sexuality. I don't know that this means anything, it's just kinda nifty. Like Nintendo's development teams just now discovered sex and they're really excited to tell everybody. Alright, that's enough of the junk drawer. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.